So again, this little part here is going to hit up here when it comes up, and it's going to recock this mechanism every time to keep the primers pushed in. So I'll go slowly here, and you can see it hitting that part right now, and it is now ratcheted it in. If you come on over to here, this side, sorry for the shaky hands, you can see that that little ratchet mechanism is pushing down on the primers. So when I was looking at this, I noticed that when this runs out of primers here, this ratchet arm will go down. It would be real simple to put an alarm on it. So for $5 worth of parts, here is a very simple low primer alert. The on switch, you can see when that goes low, turns on the alarm. And again, it's very quick to put on there. Just put it on there. One little bolt here. One little thread fastener here. And you can see when this goes up. And now if I've done this rightly, the next primer should let off the alarm. And you can see now, you can tell that it's low on primers. The design on the left is my original design for an injection mold. The one on the right is the one I designed for you can make simple at home. And in the notes below, I'll put a link to the original video. And I will now show you how to make the part on the right. Here is a life-size drawing of all the parts you need to make. You can do a screen print and then make sure you print it out to the correct ruler size. So after you print it out, make sure the ruler on the paper matches up to a life-size ruler. Here are all the plastic parts that I cut out of the paper and glued down to a piece of 1/8 thick plexiglass. You might have to go onto eBay and just search for 1/8 inch thick plexiglass if no one in your area carries it. After gluing down all the parts, I drilled out the correct holes. For the slot that the red pen is pointing to, I drilled 3/8 diameter holes and then smoothed it with a file. For cutting out the parts, I found a bandsaw worked the best, but obviously if you don't have that, you can use a hand coping saw. After cutting out your parts, this is what the raw edge looks like. If you wanted to polish the edges, the first step would be first smooth the edges down with a file. After it has been filed smooth, sand it with about a 300 grit sandpaper. Use a buffing wheel with the correct compound on the buffing wheel for plastic. Lightly push the plastic and move it back and forth against the buffing wheel for a few seconds. And this is what your polished edge should look like. I polished all the edges in all the parts that I've been making for this. This is where I have glued my paper template to my 33 thousandths brass shim stock. You can find this in Lowe's in their hobby department in the long pull-out trays, or I'm sure you could find it on eBay. Just search 33 thousandths brass shim stock. In this picture, you can see that the rough brass part has been cut out, the hole has been drilled, and note the shaded area on the paper template that will be cut out in the next photo. This shows the part on the pusher that has to be cut off, and it also shows the slot that had to be cut in it so you can bend the 90-degree bend there. This is the part with a 90-degree bend on it, and now it just needs some finish handwork with filing and sanding all the edges. For the brass pusher, you'll need to make a ferrule that goes inside of it, and you'll need to get the base part from Lowe's or Home Depot or any other places that carries plumbing parts. This is a very basic plumbing part. You can find it at a plumbing store. From the end of the tube, you will need to cut off a 1/16 of an inch slice. The easiest way I have found to cut this slice is with a Dremel tool and a cutoff disc in it. Take your time, this is not an easy job. Here are all the parts that you will need to assemble your half pusher moon assembly. Here is a picture of your half moon assembled. Here is a picture of what you will need for putting your sub-assemblies together. This is the picture of the sub-assemblies put together. The next thing to make is the torsional spring, and you need 0.024 music wire. You can search for that on eBay. Just put down 0.024 music wire and you'll get a lot of hits on it. Or if you find a spring that's already coiled up that's approximately that thickness, you can uncoil it and use it. I originally did this and it worked okay, but the music wire in the raw state is definitely better. So cut your music wire 3.5 inches long, and then take about 1/8 of an inch of the wire at the end and bend it to a 90-degree angle. To bend your spring, you'll have to take your assembly and remove the primer pusher insert that was on the half moon, and then put the wire into that 1/16 hole on the base. Clamp it down with a clamp. You can see the blue clamp held there, because while you're bending the wire, you don't want that popping out of the hole. Now grab the end of the wire and wrap it around the stud 2 complete turns. And this is approximately what your finished spring should look like. After you put your assembly all back together, this is what it should look like. Just a note of how the part locates to the Lee press. The arrow on the left shows that there's a hole that the primer shaker extension goes through. The arrow in the middle shows that there's a stud in the plastic that locates to the bottom of the chute, and the top arrow, the right arrow, shows that the edge of the plastic must rest against that hard lip that protrudes from the top of the primer chute. Now at this point you can put your assembly on your Lee Pro 1000 primer chute to see how it fits. A couple of notes. As you go to load it onto the primer chute, lift the brass pusher up and out of the way so it doesn't get smashed when you first mount it to the primer chute. And then once it's on the primer chute, make sure the point of the brass pusher drops down into the chute so it can push the primers. Also, this is the point now where you might need to do some hand fitting or tweaking to get this part working correctly. This picture shows all of the components that you will need to make a low primer alarm switch. Here is a possible source of buzzers you could use from eBay. While searching through eBay, I found a company that sells a combination of battery holder and an on and off switch. So this would solve the issue for the battery holder and the switch at once. Here is a possible source for the micro switches. Remember, the mounting holes will have to be drilled out to 1/8 of an inch in both mounting holes. Here is a picture of all the wires welded together. For the micro switch, the 2 washers go between the switch and the plastic, and obviously 1 washer per bolt. For the micro switch, there are 3 solder points. You only have to use the 2 solder points to the right, far right of the micro switch as shown in the picture above. When assembling, make sure that the micro switch lever goes below the bolt that comes through the half moon for the brass pusher. After you've got all the parts assembled, attach it to your Lee Pro 1000 and test it a few times. Make sure everything's working correctly. I have my Lee Pro 1000 shown here without the dies to make it a little bit easier to see. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you.